Welcome to Software Rocks, where I'm going to teach you how to take your software development from average to amazing. On today's show, project managers are hurting your development, and something you can start doing today to make your development better. Project managers are hurting your development. That's a bit of an evocative title, and I will be completely honest with you, I've been backwards and forwards on a number of titles for this one. I initially called project managers dinosaurs, and I figured probably best not. But I think the question is valid. As we move more and more into an agile way of working, and as companies want more innovative and dynamic ways of working and doing development, are project managers so relevant anymore? Or, here's another question for you, were project managers ever relevant? Again, probably being a bit evocative, but I think it's a worthwhile question. I think it's something that's worth talking about, because you work in a lot of places and you meet a lot of project managers, and most of the time, when I look at project managers doing their work, and they're doing good work, don't get me wrong, I know some really excellent project managers, but I look at what they're doing and I think to myself, you're not managing a project. That isn't project work. That's work a developer should be doing, or that's work a tester should be doing. The team can take charge of that. You don't need to be there. What is a project manager? What's the purpose of a project manager? So I've got a couple of things here. What is the purpose of a project manager? So here's a couple of bits and pieces to discuss what is the purpose of project manager. To plan the resources. I hate the word resources when you talk about people, but we'll go with it. Project manager, to plan the resources. Understand the scope of the work that's being done, the size of it, what it's there to do. Estimate the time it will take to complete. Manage the people. Solve problems. Change the work when time is running out. Liaise between the team and the directors. Report on progress. And the core one, the whole purpose of the name is to manage the project. I'm putting manage in scare quotes. So there's a couple of assumptions in there. A couple of assumptions have been made about what you can know about a project. The first of those being you must know enough about the project to be able to scope it and to size it and to resource it and to actually run it. Now, as we know from all the agile bits and pieces we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, the whole point of agile is accepting that you don't know what's going to come. You don't know the size of the problems. You don't know what's out there. If you look at all of that, the whole job is based on the assumption that you can know what's coming, you know what people want, and you can predict what they're going to need. Now, all the stuff we talked about agile over the last couple of weeks and stuff I'm hoping you're looking up for yourself, you'll start to see that you can't know a lot of this stuff. You just don't know what it is until you start. And if you don't know what it is until you start, do you need someone to manage it? Is it really a problem for a manager, or is that just a problem for the people doing the work? Where did the project manager come from? So project management has its roots going well beyond software development, probably going back right to the beginning of people doing work and working in factories. So anywhere where you had work, where you had to coordinate lots of people, there was lots of parts that had to be delivered, you need a project manager for that. You've got lots of people doing lots of different jobs, you need to coordinate between them. They're probably not going to be able to do it themselves. Project managers are a perfect fit for that. They can sit in there, keep the coordination, keep everything flowing, know what's coming in, know what's coming out. But we're talking about, so we've gone back to a time when there's little thinking about these jobs. This project management is perfect for jobs where there's little variance between what happens from this run to the next run. There is no real change. Everything stays the same. And so therefore you can predict really well what's going to happen. Laying a brick wall 10 feet wide by 6 feet high, that's going to take the same amount of time as it took to build the last brick wall that was 10 feet wide. And it will take the same amount of time as the next one. So it's very predictable. And in that world, project management makes a lot of sense. You've got very predictable elements that you can do again and again. It basically becomes a task for job scheduling. If you think about it, waterfall is the natural progression of that thinking. Even though when waterfall was proposed, it was very clear it was never going to work. Even if you read the original paper that talks about waterfall as a process, it actually says in there this is a process that won't work. I'll have to find a reference to it, but it's true. He talks about waterfall as a process, here's all the steps, and after that immediately says, this will never work. But obviously all the project managers never heard that part. So waterfall is a natural progression of this sort of thinking. Lots of very nice linear steps that can be planned out. We know everything before we start, there's no surprises. We can go through all these bits and pieces, and out the end will come a lovely bit of software. Fantastic. The adoption of waterfall is based on the assumption that you can treat building software like building a house. If I build one web application over here, the next web application will be the same, just as the next web application will be the same. I can define that process out. I can plan it. If I've got a plan before I start, I know everything that I need to know. I know how long bits and pieces took. I can produce my lovely Gantt charts that say, when we built this last time, this took exactly this amount of time. It will take exactly this amount of time again. And you've given yourself a nice set of well-defined steps that you can follow. If you follow this process, you will get this result out the end of it. Perfect. That's exactly what managers want to hear. That's exactly how you want it to be. I will go through this thing. It will take this much time. Out of the end, you will get this and everyone will love it. But on top of that, I think the piece that is less obvious is the concept that you need someone to manage it. You've got all these people who potentially you don't trust. They're your workers. And again, this is perhaps old school thinking, but I know it's still out there. I've seen it many times. You've got all these people. You can't trust them. You need someone to manage that process. You need them to look over their shoulder and make sure they're actually working. I'd like to say that thought process isn't out there, but I know it is. So I think we can see some flaws in this sort of thinking. Let's go back over those points and take them apart, and let's look at how Agile approaches them. So waterfall is based in the belief that you can treat building software like building a house. At first glance, and this is why waterfall has taken hold and it is out there as a process, that makes a lot of sense. You're building a website. A website is a website. It doesn't vary all that much from the last time. There's only so much you can do with it. Obviously, that's not quite so true if you build really complex websites, but let's take it as just a simple form and other bits and pieces. It's only so complex. You can't do all that much. But instantly, as soon as you start, in come the problems. Users don't know what they want. They're never going to know what they want until they actually see it. And waterfall instantly falls down at this point. It doesn't build in any mechanism for giving feedback, so you can't have the users change their mind. That's already been set in stone. This is where change requests and all lovely other bits and pieces come in. But change requests are an acceptance that waterfall is a broken process. Every time you do one of these projects, you will always get change requests come out the other end of it because people change their mind. Time to accept that this process doesn't work. But it's not just the users changing their mind. Requirements might change while the project is in flow. You get halfway through the project and the company decides, you know what, we don't want to go this direction, we need to go in that direction. What do? Do you abandon the project? Do you just keep on going? Doesn't make a lot of sense. You might change your approach halfway through the project. You may come up with a completely different way to do it. And again, waterfall won't support you in that. Waterfall will say, no, you've started, you must finish, save that one for next time. You've got to be pragmatic about these things, of course, and I hope the development teams out there are. But if the thinking changes, why doesn't the project change? This is where the job of the project manager starts to fight the process. This is where the project manager starts to fight with the developers and the testers, because their job is to keep the project on track, keep it on its course that was originally defined at the start, and make sure it flows through its bits and pieces regardless of what happens. So in essence, the project manager is fighting the change, even though they may look at it and go, yep, change is inevitable, it's going to happen, we're not doing it this time because we've already set the project. Doesn't make sense. So no matter how good the reason for that change, the company's thinking has changed, technology has changed, the customer's moved on, it doesn't matter. The project manager is there to fight that change and keep the project on its original course. Again, when you think about it, doesn't make any sense. Second part to that, there's a well set of defined steps you can follow, and there's a process that you can follow that will give you a result every time. So again, building houses, that's absolutely true. You have a set of plans, you build the foundations, you build the walls, you do other bits and pieces, you follow the plan, you have a pattern that you can go with. Every time you will turn out a house that will be the same and it will work every single time. In the real world, software is nothing like that. What worked last time may not at all work this time. What works for company A may never work for company B. And this is where Agile steps in again. This is where Agile says we're going to empower the developers, we're going to empower the testers, and we're going to give them permission to solve the problems. We're not going to stick to outdated, rigid structures. We're not going to impose a view from the outside. The people who know the problem the best and the people who can solve the problem are the people working on the problem. If you want to get to true innovation, and again, I want to tackle innovation. I think innovation and leadership are two inexorably linked pieces. If you want to get to that sort of level where you're doing incredible innovation, it's all about empowering your staff, and that means giving over the control to the developers and testers, and not putting in these structures that are specifically designed to stop them. Another part of waterfall, predicting how long each piece will be, and using all your predictions to give an end date to the project. This is probably the core of a project manager. Making predictions, giving estimates, that's the real reason they're there. That's their purpose, is to produce the Gantt chart, to calculate the resources, to make the prediction and set the end date for the product. And that's an important role. That's an important part of all of this. It gives the company the nice warm feeling that they're in control of this development or this piece of work, that they know when it will finish and somebody is actually looking after it. Now, of course, it opens up the question of how much control do they really have and how realistic are their expectations. They're difficult questions, and anyone who's built software knows that giving predictions, giving solid end dates is always going to be something of a lie. The project manager knows it when they start. The software developers know it when they start. They already know they don't know enough to be able to give an accurate prediction. They may never know enough to give an accurate prediction. But because the company wants an end date, because they insist on having a final date for this thing, even if they can't tell you what it is, the project manager has to be there to give this end date. And in many ways is potentially the scapegoat when it doesn't go the way they already know it's not going to go. So there, the project manager makes the Gantt charts. He shows every step of the process that will be taken to actually develop and build this thing. Normally, hardly ever consulting with the developers, weirdly. Some do a really good job. A lot that I've met simply put out blocks and say, yep, development happens here. Again, I think to myself, well, what's the point in that? But they do. Here's development, here's testing. It's simply not an honest way to go about developing software. Let's put to one side the agile concept of releasable units of code, everything being contained within a sprint, testing happening there, everything else. Let's put all that to one side. One of the core concepts in agile, and something that stings so many companies, is agile is all about being honest. It's about being honest with yourself, with your team, and with the company, and expecting the company to be honest with you back. And part of that is estimations. And estimations are exactly that. They're not quotes. They're not saying we will definitely finish on this time. They are imperfect judgments of the amount of work based on imperfect data. But the great thing is you're providing yourself a feedback to say, we don't know everything yet. Ask us again in a couple of weeks' time and we will know more. We can become more accurate as we go forward. That's the most important part, I personally think, of Agile. It's the feedback mechanism of knowing you don't know enough yet, but you will know enough in the future. And this is the part that I think project managers potentially struggle with, is where waterfall really hurts companies, and project managers compound the problem. They have no mechanism for gauging feedback other than trying to judge on a big block of development how far a development group is through that block of development. Let's imagine you've got a block of development that's 3 months long, and you say to the development team, well, how far are you through it? And they say, oh, we're about 35% through all the development. The development team are making a guess. They're just making a judgment call, and the project manager knows that and will potentially adjust their numbers accordingly. From that, he's probably not going to adjust the end date. There's no mechanism to actually judge what's really being done, and so therefore the end date is completely unknown. Whereas Agile is all about basing your estimates on the work you've already done and using that to predict where you're going to be. But this sort of honesty and acceptance that you don't actually know, you can't know the answers, is very scary to a lot of companies. They don't like the idea that they're not in control. They don't really know what's going on. So the project manager's job in a lot of ways is to calm the business down and reassure them, actually, no, it's all right. We know where we're going. See my chart. Here we go. We're nicely along here. I think it's time that companies became more honest with themselves and accepted maybe they're not in as much control of the software development as they think they are. But that's always been the case. Now they're just accepting it. As long as you set up your teams with good people, basically just get out of their way and allow them to do it as they should, you'd be surprised how quickly they can turn out some really amazing work. The whole point of Agile, the reason for doing it, is all about turning out work quickly and seeing the results quickly, so you can start feeding back and seeing what's coming and making judgments based on the reality of the situation, not based on a pie-in-the-sky idea that somebody had long before the project started. And when you say, well, quickly, what do you mean by quickly? If you're not seeing results come out of your development team after the very first sprint, namely 2 weeks, then something is wrong. The whole point of doing this, the whole point of going agile, is you see results literally that fast. Yeah, you're not going to have a finished application in 2 weeks, but you're going to see something and you'll start to gain confidence that something is being developed and something will appear. There's nothing worse than a development team going away for 3 months, then coming back and with a finished product that nobody's ever seen and simply isn't what people wanted. The final part is somebody has to manage this. Somebody has to manage the development. And if we're being honest, and if we're talking about what really happens inside software companies, is it true? Is somebody really managing the development? And if they are, is it the person you think it is? Because I'm prepared to say it's probably not. From the project manager's perspective, Agile is a horror story. There appears to be no control. There's no goals. There's no process. How could anyone manage that? That's the point of Agile, and I think this is where project management, the idea of project managers has probably come to an end, is you can't manage it in the way you think. You can't manage it by setting goals and expecting it to get to where you want it. It's much more subtle than that. The people doing the work, the people on the ground, they're the ones that know the most about what's going on. They're controlling the processes. They're in charge of development. They're in charge of testing. They're very skilled and very intelligent people. So allow them to self-organise, allow them to set it up and look after it in the way they want to do it, because they're the ones doing the work and they will manage themselves. Empower the product owner to actually control and guide the product. They're responsible for it. Allow them to do their job. Empower the developers and testers to look after their processes and meet the needs of the product owner. If you do those things, you then start to ask, then I think it opens up the question, where is the project manager's role in that? Hopefully I've convinced you that Agile is the way forward. I think it's the way forward. Hopefully I've convinced you that Agile is the way forward, and if you're listening to this, that's probably already the case. You've got your product owner, you've got your developers, you've got your testers. We're seeing there is no place for a project manager in that. So what do you do with all these highly skilled individuals who've got a lot of knowledge about the company and a lot of skill in organising and coordinating? They're probably better placed to do other work already. You just need to free them up to do it. So the first and most obvious thing to do is to make them product owners. They already have a knack for planning. They already understand the products the company is making. Make them into product owners. Now, a lot of project managers will look at that and go, well, it's basically the same job. But I think fundamentally, no, it's a very different job. There is no controlling the actual development anymore. There is no trying to plan it out. It's simply understanding the product, having a vision for the product, defining it, and then stepping back and allowing the developers to do the work that has to be done. Very, very different from project management. Maybe they can sit alongside a product owner that you've got, help them with the bigger vision, help them understand what it takes to produce software, coordinate various bits and pieces, work with the other product owners in the company to make more cohesive sets of products. Or maybe you can move them up to look at strategy and come up with a better 5-year plan for where everything is going. There's lots of different places that these project managers can go to and provide, I think, much better value to the company. The key thing I think worth understanding is a plan is useful, is always going to be useful. It helps guide thinking and show a vision, but it's only going to be useful for a small amount of time. It's only going to be useful for a few weeks, maybe a couple of months, before it has to change. Don't put people into positions whose job it is to make sure that the plan doesn't change. Don't put people in who will enforce a plan that isn't going to work. Have people who can adapt to change and keep their eye on the end goal. Something you can do today to make your development better. Today I want to talk to you about commander's intent, coming off the back of what we talked about last week with pattern and other ideas we can get from the military and how they coordinate their work. How do they tell the troops? How do commanders tell the troops what they want to do? Commander's intent is what they came up with, or at least is one of the tools they use to do that. Fundamentally, it's about telling the troops what you want done and, more importantly, why you want it done. So if you remember what Patton said, never tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do and they will surprise you with their ingenuity. The why part is the most important part because it empowers your troops to make their own decisions. If they know why you want something, they can take advantage of opportunities as they appear, rather than simply following the orders that you set them. How does this apply to development work? Let's imagine you're building a website and you tell your developers you want to collect the users' names and email addresses. The what part is telling them to build a form to collect that information. The why part is explaining why you want to collect that information and let's say you wanted to say to them, we want to collect that personal information so we have a better connection with our customers. By telling them the why, you've opened up their thinking. So now they can obviously build that form as you wanted, but they can use what they know about the customers and why you want to do that to put it into other parts of the site. So on the thank you page, in the menus, in the sidebars, they can piggyback work they've already done and they can implement new work because they know you're going to want it there. You told them why you wanted it, and so that's what they're going to do. By simply explaining the why, explaining why you want to do something, you've opened up their thinking and you've created a more powerful product. This all goes back to explaining your vision and being very clear with that and empowering your teams to make decisions for themselves. They're probably going to come up with things that you never thought of. Sometimes those things are not going to work, but sometimes those things are going to just smack you in the face and you'll think to yourself, why did I never think of that? That's commander's intent. So start explaining the why to your developers, not just the what. Thanks for listening to Software Rocks. For more information in the show notes, go to the website softwarerocks.tv/5. I just heard before I started recording the show that I'm now on Stitcher as well. So if you're listening on Stitcher, thank you very much. Don't forget, if you like the show, please give me a review on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on Stitcher, whatever platform it is you're listening to me on. It really helps me understand what it is you want and that I'm providing good content, and it helps get the word out to more people so that they can find out what I'm doing and hopefully benefit from it as well. If you want to get in touch, ask a question, or you just got something to say, you can email me, andrew@softwarerocks.tv, or you can join the Facebook group. I'm probably not doing as much with the Facebook group as I should, but I'm going to work on that. Or you can sign up for the newsletter, and that's where I'm putting all my core information. So when episodes come out, when I've got ideas that I need to run past people, and building on that one, because I think that's probably the best way to talk to everyone. Or finally, you can follow me on Twitter @AndrewBinstead. And again, feel free to ask me questions on there. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone. Thanks for listening, and I hope your development just got a little bit better. Welcome to Software Rocks. Project. There we go. Already got it wrong. Welcome to Software. Welcome to Software. For God's sake. So. Instantly onto the so's. God, I love so's. Do you know what's really weird? I don't say so half as much in the real world. I've no idea why I keep saying so on here. Anyway, I'm going to catch them, stop them, kill all the so's. So again, So when you think about it, there was a massive so. So, there we go. So how does this apply? There's another so, look at that. I just heard before I came on air. That sounds very posh, doesn't it?